Here's when to expect STAAR scores in 2023 for the grades 3 through 8 assessments. You are not alone if you are confused about when STAAR scores will be coming out in 2023. Angela here from Custom Classroom. Just a reminder, I am not affiliated with TEA or STAAR, but I hope to help you with my interpretation of TEA's Spring 2023 STAAR reporting timeline. I'll start with the short answer. Final scores won't be available to schools until August 11th, 2023, and then to families on August 16th. But I have good news. You can still get a good idea of how you did as soon as late May 2023. Let's take a look at an overview of the timeline, and then I'll explain what it all means. May 12th, the testing ends. May 22nd, raw scores are released. June 9th, preliminary assessment reports come out for raw data only. Then August 11th, the final assessment reports come out and include the scale score. And then August 16th, these final scores or assessments will be released to families. So what does this all mean? Well, on May 22nd, schools will receive the raw scores and get a little bit of a better idea of how students did. So let's start with what is a raw score. To help explain, here's an example of what STAAR released raw score conversion table looked like for last year on the 2022 test. The state does not release the final raw score conversion tables until the actual test has been scored. They use the data from the results of the test to determine the level of rigor on the exam and adjust the minimum standard for each area. And they can move this like a curve or a sliding scale up and down depending on the results. So let's go back to the raw score. The raw score is how many points a student earned. So basically, it's the student's response to all the questions and whether they were correct or incorrect. So if we look at this example, and this is sixth grade reading from spring 2022, let's say you received a raw score of 25. Well, this is out of a total that's 40. So your raw score is 25 points out of a total 40 points. Now, if we look at an example of a release chart for English end of course, that's supposed to be an example of what the 2023 chart might look like. It includes a note at the bottom that says these raw scores include multiple choice plus the essay times 2. So here we can assume when these come out, the essay, which is now short constructed response or extended constructed response, will be calculated in this raw score. But here's what the times 2 means. So if we're looking at a extended constructed response, each response by a student will have 2 graders. So let's say grader 1 evaluated the student's answer and awarded them 4 points out of the 5 on the rubric. And let's say grader 2 evaluated the response and gave the student 3 out of the 5 points on the rubric. Therefore, this student received 7 out of a total of 10 points they could earn for both of these gradings. Now, these scores are considered preliminary until quality control processes are completed. And that means they look over all the scores as a whole to calculate the scale score. So at this point, we won't know for sure what passing or failing is, but you can get a general idea. If you fall toward the highest numbers scored, you can feel pretty good about passing. And if you fall toward the lowest numbers of the scores, you could have failed the test. But what if schools need this data to make decisions about summer school or grade promotions? To support these instruction decisions before the scale scores are available on August 11th, TEA will provide a guidance table like this sample released to indicate whether the raw scores earned are likely passing, likely not passing, or in the zone of uncertainty. So if you fall in the middle here, passing will rely heavily on the slide of the scale and what TEA determines as a passing score. At this point, teachers and schools will have a pretty good idea of how students did. Now, next up are the preliminary assessment reports, and they come out on June 9th. Now, these standard preliminary assessment reports are basically a group of data released in different files. It will include a variety of data collected across districts and campuses. It will be put together in a summary report, and it will include information about rosters as well as student individual report cards or student scores. But I must emphasize here that this is only the raw data. No final decision on what is actually passing will have been made at this point. Now, as we get closer to the new school year, finally, the final scores with the scale score will be released. So let's talk about what is a scale score. A scale score is taking the total number of questions the student answered correct, or the raw score, and then after analyzing all the data, it will be converted into a consistent and standardized scale. So let's go back to our previous example of the raw score of 25 out of the total of 40. It, based on this sixth grade score table from 2022, this student would have scored a 1559 as a scale score. It also shows that the student performed in the 51st percentile, which means that they scored higher than 54% of the other students who took the same test. So what's different about a scale score is that it takes into account the difficulty of the questions on the test. They look at how easy or difficult a question was for everyone who answered it. So the most important thing we're waiting on here from TEA is the scale data and their decision on what is passing. Once TEA has evaluated all the scores and the difficulty of the new item types, they will decide the range of what score is passing. Now, in my opinion, this year in 2023, this process is extra important since the new test cannot be compared directly to the old test. The difficulty of the questions has increased. So I feel or believe that TEA is most likely going to scale down the passing score to reflect this increase in difficulty. So this means that now at this point, on August 11th, schools have received the final updated and passing scores. Now up next, August 16th, is when families will be able to access these scores. And how they will be able to access them is TEA will release the scores in the Family and Analytics portal. I hope you found this video informative. Check out my other videos to learn more and stay up to date with STAAR testing.